Hello and welcome to People Online. This is the eighth video in a series of presentations on competency based HRM. Today we would be taking up role of HRD in setting up a competency based HRM. We would be talking in terms of the four distinct phases that are there in a typical project that seeks to set up a competency based HRM. The four phases are evaluation phase, project planning phase, implementation phase, and post implementation phase. Target audience. The target audience for this series of presentations would be 1. Students of MBHR, 2. Industry practitioners who would like to implement competency based HRM, and 3. Industry practitioners who would like to get the best out of an existing model. Contents. In this video, we would be covering evaluation phase, project planning phase, implementation phase 1A, implementation phase 1B, implementation phase 2, implementation phase 3, and post implementation phase. Evaluation phase. The evaluation phase is the critical first step in setting up a competency based HRM. This stage may include the following steps. A. Developing conceptual clarity. The mode could be study of related technical literature, interaction with those organizations who have already implemented a competency model, and of course, consultants. B. Make or buy decision. An important decision at this stage would be to decide whether the competency model would be built from scratch, that is, custom built, or would the organization adopt an existing model with or without modifications. C. Drawing up a tentative project schedule. The simplest way to achieve this would be to seek budgetary quotations from consultants, clearly spelling out the objectives, benefits, job steps, timelines, and expenses involved in carrying out the exercise. D. Seeking top management approval. The plan needs to be presented to the management to get their approval and support. This presentation should ideally cover the concepts, costs, timelines, and the proposed plan. Project planning phase. Once the project is approved, we get into the project planning phase. This phase in turn would entail the following steps. A. Selection of the consultant. Having a consultant who has seen several competency mapping projects would always help, particularly in circumventing problems as and when they show up. B. Setting up of a steering committee. For organizations having less than 500 people, the project team can directly report to the MD. For bigger organizations, they report to a steering committee that would comprise of, amongst others, all HODs, location heads, and divisional heads. The steering committee would approve and review the project plan. Setting up a project team. The project team would comprise of the project manager, often the head of HR, the key external resource person, who is the consultant, the HR process owner, typically the head of OD, and project team members who would typically be single point of contacts for various functional units, business units, and locations, depending on how the organization is structured. The SPOCs would all be nominated by the project manager in consultation with their respective heads of departments and location heads. Drawing up the project plan. The project plan ideally should have three phases, namely competency modeling, which is phase 1, competency assessment, phase 2, and integration of the competency model to the various HR sub-functions, phase 3. The most important and tangible outcome from this process would be a project schedule. It is imperative that the format should be simple to draw up and follow. It should also help in tracking the progress. Implementation phase 1A. There would be 4 jobs that would be carried out as a part of this stage of the project, basically to create a competency model and making it known to people. A. Collecting data. The data would have to be collected from the sources in accordance with the methodology specified in the project plan. Analyzing the data. The data from different sources would then be analyzed to draw up the competency model. C. Reporting and presenting the findings. Once the analysis is over, a report would be presented to the steering committee. All going well, the committee would recommend it for endorsement by the management. Popularizing the model. This happens once the model is endorsed by the management. The steps recommended have been enumerated below. 1. It should be first communicated through circulars. There should be 1 day workshops for all managers introducing them to the model and, what is perhaps most important, how to use the model. 3. A group of internal trainers would be identified in these workshops. They would undergo a train the trainer program. Going forward, these workshops would be facilitated by the internal trainers. 4. The competency model should be displayed in the rooms, enclosures of all managers. It should also be displayed in meeting rooms and other places where people gather. Implementation phase 1B. In phase 1A, a competency framework has been created. This lists all generic competencies for the chosen employee group. One needs to now look at 2 types of role specific competencies. 1. Functional or technical or domain competencies, and 2. Special behavioral and managerial competencies. These have to be captured by interviewing the job holder and the superior using a structured questionnaire. If there are differences, and there are usually differences, that get resolved through a face-to-face discussion involving the concerned stakeholders. Implementation phase 2. After setting up the competency model, next step is assessment of job holders. The principal role of HRD is once again implementation. There would be 5 parts to this stage as well. A. Preparing people for assessment. HR process owner, in conjunction with the consultant, would plan an effective communication program. B. Assessing people. The people would then undergo assessment following a methodology as laid down in the project plan. C. Analyzing assessment data. It is also a practice to carry out both micro and macro analysis. D. Sharing the assessment findings. The assessment reports need to be shared with the assessees. Addressing queries. All queries that assessees have would have to be adequately addressed expeditiously. Implementation phase 3. Once the competency assessment has been carried out, the competency model needs to be integrated with the various sub-functions of HRM in a time-bound manner as detailed in the plan. 2 points that require special mention are: A. Communication is the key. This goes a long way in providing the desired clarity to people, why this is being done, the advantages to the company and to the employees at an individual level need to be made clear. B. Training. The integration would require people to do things differently. So, training is essential for all employees, which would help them to adapt to the new ways of working. Post implementation phase. The competency based HRM system need to be reviewed periodically for any modifications that may be needed. The identified HR process owner needs to play a stellar role in researching and identifying needed modifications. The following changes could be brought about over a period of time: redefining a competency or competencies, changing desired proficiency level or levels, removing or adding competency or competencies, integrating more HRM subfunctions, changing or modifying the method of assessment. The change requests would have to be put up for management approval with due justification by the HR department. Once approved, the changes would have to be effected in all connected documents and intimated to the employees through circulars. In case HR department has reasons to believe that the modifications approved by the management is significant, workshops may have to be again organized to communicate the changes. Some changes may require alterations in displays, which would have to be carried out immediately. Exercise 1. First appraisal ratings should be in sync with the interview scores. Let us look at a sample of 5 employees A, B, C, D, and E and their ratings and scores. Are the interview scores in sync with the first appraisal ratings? Well, here is the box. So we could see the candidates to our left. Then we have the interview score when they got into the company. This is the scoring that happened during the interview, a rating of their competencies during the interview. And then in their first appraisal, they were rated once again on the same competencies. So this is how the table looks. The question is, the first appraisal ratings, are they in sync with the interview scores, or are the interview scores in sync with the appraisal ratings? Let's see. We can use product moment correlation coefficient to check whether the interview scores and the appraisal ratings are correlated. In Excel, we can do this very easily. There's a correl function which needs to be used once we get into formulas and more functions and statistical formulas, and finally on to correl. Then fill in the arrays with the interview scores and the appraisal ratings, and we get a value of 0.6313. Now this is the value of the product moment correlation coefficient. Since this is a significant value, much higher than 0, even higher than 0.5, we conclude that the interview scores and the appraisal ratings bear a positive correlation. They appear to be in sync, and the competency-based hiring seems to be delivering, assuming of course that the appraisal ratings are giving a true picture of performance. Summary. In this video, we covered evaluation phase, project planning phase, implementation phase 1A, implementation phase 1B, implementation phase 2, implementation phase 3, and post implementation phase. Thank you for watching. If you found the video to be useful, do like, share, and subscribe. Press the bell icon to stay tuned in for our next upload. Until then, goodbye.